We are good to go.
More for your Lauren if nobody's.
Yeah, if nobody else comes, I mean, are they coming just, well, Deb's not here tonight. She's a.
Yeah, I'm here.
Well,
I'm just
I'll
not
with you.
seeing anybody.
Uh-oh.
I got it.
Oh, easy fix.
All right. Ready, Tom?
Duran and Vice Chair.
Okay. Welcome everybody to the March meeting of the Admin and Public Works Committee. Councilmember Garetano is running a little bit behind this evening, so I will lead the charge here at least for a little while. We'll see when he gets here. So I guess we can start with the roll call.
All right. Councilmember Clark.
I am happy to be here.
Councilmember Edens.
Here.
Councilmember Nyhan. Okay, Councilmember Farmer.
Here.
You. Councilmember McCutcheon.
Here,
Thank you. Councilmember Jaxie.
Here,
He's there, I see. Okay. And Councilmember Hopper. All right.
All right. With that, I guess we can do in a motion to approve the minutes from first our December meeting. Anybody cares to make that? Lauren, seconded by Teresa. Any discussion or questions on the minutes? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
I.
Aye.
aye,
Anyone opposed? Assuming that was in favor. Anyone opposed? Anybody abstain?
abstain.
All right.
Oh.
That's good. Abstain. Okay,
In that case, we do not have a majority of votes on the minutes. With an abstention, would be for the one abstention. Okay, and that would fail. That's okay, though. We can have it brought back at the next meeting with an inclusion of the March minutes as well, Vice
Okay.
Chair.
sure. All right, we'll do that. How about do we want to try for the February minutes? All right.
Yeah, motion.
Lauren will make the motion. Teresa will second it. All right. Any discussion or questions on the February minutes? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
aye,
All right. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? All right, so the February meetings. All right, and with that, we'll move to our public participation. I don't think we have anybody.
At this time, Vice Chair, we do not have anybody in the Zoom waiting lobby. Just a reminder, if you are on there, please raise your hand. Use the raise hand feature, but at this time, we do not see anyone and we do not see anyone currently in the room.
Okay, that's fine. Well, then we will move forward from public participation and into some for action items, it looks like. So we've got our geotechnology proposal. Who's handling that?
That,
Julie.
Chair, appreciate that and appreciate everyone here tonight. Just wanted to bring this to the Administration and Public Works Committee. This originally did go to the Ad hoc Building Committee as well. Right now, it has a favorable recommendation coming out of the Ad hoc Building Committee. At that meeting, the last meeting, there was a discussion of this exact proposal without the actual contract language, but the exact pricing included. It's attachment B in this one. That back in October, to kind of bring it back. Back on October 3rd, we did a tour of the building and the department identified current areas that showed distress, cracks in the walls. So the Ad hoc Building Committee had directed the team to reach out to nicely individual firms that might have specialty in geotechnical engineering services and also structural engineering services. And Geotechnology LLC actually visited City Hall, investigated the cracks in the walls on some of the areas at City Hall, and then provided a recommendation stating that there is a cause here that could be from expansion of ground in the water underneath the building that could be causing the walls to kind of stretch out a bit, upward heave, if you will. So in this case, what they will be doing, if this proceeds forward with council approval, would be they would put monitors on some of the cracks that are consistent upstairs that we've noted that are currently present to monitor if there's any discrepancy. Is it expanding at a faster rate? Seeing if it accelerates over time. Then they'll also be looking right underneath the slab of the foundation to see if there's any water present or if there's any materials that would be expanding and pushing the building upward. Along with that, they will be doing an exploration within our rain gardens that we have at the front of the building and the back of the building to test pretty much if there's rain that comes in heavy, is it causing any kind of expansion and pushing the building one way or the other? And lastly, they'll be installing a piezometer into the groundwater that will allow to monitor how much water is flowing underneath as well. So all of these items are pretty much to come back to the city and say, here are the issues that you may need to address. And that could be anything from, hey, the building has stopped settling and you're good to go. Or it could be, hey, the rain garden might be causing this issue. There's a plethora of different outcomes, but without this testing, we wouldn't be able to definitively say one way or the other what would be causing it. And if we get these answers, we'll be able to at least then say, take the next step on how to actually address the issue. But at this time, the department can report that the cracks seem to be kind of stabilizing. That being said, without a measurement tool, I can't say with 100% accuracy. So this proposal would be completely monitoring that. It could take up to 6 months to potentially a year to get all this testing done. So the earlier the better. So at this point, we'll be presenting tonight the actual contract with Geotechnology. And if a favorable recommendation comes out of the Administration Public Works Committee, we'll be taking it to council next week as an ordinance. Department is available for any questions.
Great. Anybody have any questions? Several of us were in there when we did this first time. Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question about what the difference in the two is piezometer installations. There's the one is 10,665 and the other is 6,729. And what's the difference in those two? And which one are we going with?
Well, the ad hoc bill, and it's all to the committee and the council, but the ad hoc building committee had recommended going with the little bit more expensive item because what it would be is it's installing it deeper into the rock bed pretty
Okay.
much. It's not necessarily, it's the same piezometer, it's just how far it's getting installed in this case.
Yeah, so the idea when we discussed it, the concern we had was if we go with the one just on the surface to start with, they'll perhaps come back and say, oh, we need to do it a little bit deeper now and have to go back and do it again. So why not just do it right out of the gate? All right. Any other questions? Okay. Well, if there's no other questions or concerns, I guess we were looking for a motion to move this forward to next week.
Yep.
All right. Would anybody care to make a motion to move the proposal forward to council next week? Ms. Clark makes the motion. Anybody want a second? Lauren seconds. All right. Everybody clear on the motion? Okay. All those in favor of moving the proposal forward to council, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right, we'll see it again here in about a week. All right, Public Works, we've got some 4 information items. Your management's up first. Who would like to take a crack?
I can take the crack on that one right here. So wanted to give a quick overview. We've discussed this quite a little bit here, but wanted to expand just a bit and discuss next steps and what to expect. So happy to say that the 2024 efforts for deer management went off really well. White Buffalo was able to successfully cull 300 deer within the NE1 area, which met the initial goals and should show a significant reduction in the deer population in the areas that they were able to get to. In this case, we had a lot of success in the area this time. That being said, the next step is getting a final report from White Buffalo, which they did just get over to us. So not in time to get the action on the agenda, but that will be brought back next month, 4th next month. And the next piece of this is that the Department of Administration, Department of Public Works has already contacted the police department here in St. Louis County Police to do another deer population survey. So the bloom is coming up and once flowering begins, it actually affects the site distance sampling that they would be doing out there. So actually, next Monday at City Council, we'll be having a resolution on the floor to approve the deer population survey. Most of it is done with overtime expenses and we've already budgeted probably enough to cover around 1 to 2 of the maps that we currently have. But in order to cover the rest of them, it could be up to around $15,000 extra that we'd like to have there. What the resolution will state is that right now we'd be appropriating funds towards this out of the deer management fund, and then this would be reflected at mid-year within the budget. So it allows us to, kind of just make sure we have those funds available. What we would hope to do with the police department, it takes about 3 days per map to be able to do the actual sampling. And we would hope to get as many of the maps done before the spring hits with the flowering. But we would first focus on the NE1 area because we do owe that to the Department of Conservation first and foremost. But then there's 3 other maps that we would be shifting focus on as priority as well. And I'll explain why in a second. But it's the NE2 area, which is directly east of the NE1 area. And then you have the West 1 area, which is kind of at the upper top border of the NE1 area. And then you have the Southeast 1 area, which is directly south. So those 3 areas, White Buffalo, we met with, the department met with them this week and they highly recommended that any effort that takes place next year should happen in a map that is adjacent or within the same, some kind of overlap. But if anything, if you're moving locations, make it sure it's adjacent so you can maintain and keep hitting that same area of the population. So they highly recommended that. So we are looking at those 4 maps as top priority. And then if we were not to get to all 6 by the end of this winter period where there's not flowering, then we would conduct the rest of the survey once winter hits, probably in November or December of 2024. So putting the money and appropriating the money and this at this time would still benefit us because we would look to do that before the end of the year. In this case, we're aiming to at least get any one of those 3 maps that are kind of the next focus area. We'll take that data and then hopefully have a good understanding of what's the next step for which map we're going to. And right now, the department is currently working on updating the website to kind of switch the focus from, hey, here's what we're doing to here's the success of the first portion of the program. And then having a new kind of section added to it that says, hey, are deer an issue in your neighborhood or in your area or in the city in general? What do you think? And have those individuals hopefully fill out a form on the website and say that, hey, we support this program. And the hope would be to map these individuals out within the maps that we'll have available with the deer population survey. And then we'll be able to hopefully use that as another criteria, if you will, when choosing the next map to make sure that additional property access is already there. Because an individual that's already supported the program and supported, what we're doing will be more likely willing to allow property access for culling purposes. So that's kind of the approach at this point. We do have the report in from White Buffalo. We'll be reporting that back, and it pretty much is the age, sex, and just general characteristics of the deer that were culled, all within the parameters outlined by the Department of Conservation and the permit. That being said, too, the next step is the deer survey and then choosing the next spot so we can start getting working on communication. And the department is available for any questions, but if the Department of Public Works has any adjacent comments, more than happy to hear as well.
No, you did a good job.
Oh, thank you, Rick.
All right, any questions? Lauren?
Yes, from everything I've gathered, this has been an extremely successful program. My understanding is that they also were able to complete the call of 300 deer as capped with less bait sites than anticipated. And so I would it could indicate, for one, that the deer population was even worse than we thought. So I guess my only concern is if it doesn't show, a 300 deer reduction from survey to survey, that maybe the initial count was not as accurate. Or it could just mean that those bait sites were extremely tasty and very successful and drew all of the deer to them. And that's why they were so successful with less. So I'm just regurgitating what I think I understand, which is that we hope to be on top of it more, especially now that we have established success, so that those bait sites are in place a lot earlier and that we're not down to the wire without having any of that negotiated. Is that correct? So we're really getting ahead of it for next year. Okay,
That is correct.
that's what I thought.
All right, in this case too, they utilized 24, well, it was actually 26 full days, but they operated for 24 of those days. And we were contracted to either have them hit 300 or operate for a full 26. In this case, you know, they, even with the amount we had, which was around 30 bait sites, initially projecting 40 would be needed. They had told us from the get-go that 300 would most likely be able to be accomplished just by their drive-bys. They had not seen, just as a reference point too, they had not seen Wildwood just yet when they had originally posted that number. They had come out and actually started visiting and knocking doors and then realized that there is a significant amount. And they, without doing the actual survey, have already suggested there could be over 100 deer per square mile in any one area based off just their experience. So this deer population count, it should be used as a comparison because we did the last one in 2020. So there is some time there for that population to grow. So if there's not as big of a dent as we would expect, then it might have some, there's a lot of factors that could be at play here. That being said, I would almost say that as we kind of work through this program, it would be obviously important to hit the map and do a deer population survey for those areas that we've gone through, but doing a full deer population survey of the 6 maps, most likely each year while we're conducting the program, because the cost of doing the survey, even though it's not a perfect science, it's a good science. And, you know, with the money we will be putting towards this program, we're going to want to just have those benchmark statistics year over year, which will help us just get more information in general. But yes, the planning process has already begun for the next year.
I'm so glad to hear that. And is it possible that they could have a recommendation that we want to hit any one again and not move on to any two?
That is true.
Yeah, I jokingly say as I drove past a field in anyone that there were 20 deer mocking me in a field driving by them. So it's that, you know, if that would be the recommendation of White Buffalo, I would hope that we would go with their recommendation rather than just saying, no, let's move on to my ward. But
All right, anybody else have anything on the deer? Yeah, I'll just add, I had a conversation with Ryan at White Buffalo and his suggestion, which is I think what Tom's talking about too, is once we get this survey done and this report in, you know, rather than just having like taking up stakes and move into one thing, you know, have sort of a hybrid situation where we're moving outward from where we started as compared to just picking up and moving to a different part of town. But I think leaning on our partners is an important part of what we're doing there. So I'm excited to see what we got. All right. Old State Road. I assume that's gotta be you.
I believe so. I'll start it off at least. Council members, this item has been in front of you before, in front of the full city council as well. As I think you're aware, the information I provided to you is essentially hot off the press. So I apologize. I did not have it earlier to provide to you, but we got a response from St. Louis County earlier, maybe late on Monday, very late. We did get some feedback from St. Louis County regarding their recommended next steps. If you recall, the county had been working with MoDOT. They do have a safety project that is getting started. It proposed to include Old State Road. But what we found, I think that was presented at your last meeting, was that the team that won the bid was only recommending the installation of a centerline rumble strip and improved signs on that section of Old State Road south of Old Fairway. So we all felt that it wasn't addressing the concerns that we are hearing about and are seeing in the data, which is an increased crash rate on that lower section, predominantly south of Bluffview Park, I believe. So we did follow up with the county on that, and they indicated there was additional steps they were considering. They had then provided us that information, which I put in my memo to you. And essentially what they've rolled out are two things. And one is the idea of a possibility for a cost share project that would be a high friction surface treatment that would be applied on the lower section of Old State Road between Old Fairway down to Route 109. Essentially, you read between the lines, what they're recommending is to look at 109 on Old State Road up to St. James Place, which is, I think, the most concerning stretch of the road where the accident rate is the highest. It's about a 2,500 foot section of the road, if my measurements are correct. And they're saying that they would be willing to share the cost to install a high friction surface treatment on that section of Old State Road with the city. They have been able to back into basically the availability of about $168,000 from their bank or their piggy bank. And they're saying if the city basically picks up the difference, they would be more than happy to move forward with that project. And the way it would be done is the design build contractor would essentially do the work as a change order item. So they would change order the work that was previously proposed into being the high friction surface treatment, and it would get done through that project. And the good thing there is we don't have to worry about putting a bid package together on the side, doing it ourselves, administering the contract ourselves. It's all gonna be done. If we went forward, it would be done through MoDOT's and the county's design build effort. So it does save a lot of time and effort in that regard. So it'd be very easy to implement if we wanted to move forward. Basically, they laid it out and said, if you want to do more than that first segment, install that surface treatment beyond that point, they're not opposed to it. They just won't share in the cost. So they ran some numbers, and I don't know that I, quite frankly, have had time to check their numbers, nor do I really agree with them totally. So we might want to do a little more work to sharpen our pencils here and make sure we've got good numbers. I'm not convinced that I totally agree with them. They don't quite add up in my mind, but the bottom line is they're saying it's about $1 million project to do the friction course from 109 up to Old Fairway. And if they wanted to go and do the whole section, they're not opposed to it. They're just not going to share in the cost beyond that first 2,500-foot section up to St. James Place, if that makes sense. So that's the one item I wanted to pass your way. That is certainly subject to discussion and direction. And then the other item, if you notice at the bottom of my memo, the issue of trucks. Now, we finally have seen a change in the county's position relative to trucks. They backed off their prior position of looking at only crash history and looked at essentially the geometry of the road. There's an engineering application you can utilize that literally will model a truck on the road, and it can tell you if the trailer off tracks over the center line. And that's what they did. And they determined that, yes, they found that it did.
Yeah,
So
no kidding.
they have backed off that stance, and they are, I think, moving forward with the implementation of truck restrictions. So that's something we've pushed for a long time. I don't have a firm date as to when that would get done, but they are looking at signage that would be necessary from their perspective to do that. We might have to pass an ordinance as well. So I'll have to check on that from our perspective. They did make the point of stating that with our restrictions that we've placed, the through trucks would be prohibited, but if it's a local truck, only moving, they would still be allowed access onto Old State Road. And that's kind of the way ours is written as well, frankly. We've done everything on any number of rural roads to discourage semi-tractor trucks, except for those local deliveries. So those were the two items I wanted to bring to your attention. I'm sure Mr. Garitano would be interested in this item, I'm sure, as well. So it's under for information. If there's any questions, or if you'd like it back on the agenda for next month, or if you'd like us to research or do any additional work on this, please let us know.
Laura.
Well, this is not nothing, and congratulations on moving the needle on truck restrictions and getting them to offer anything on cost sharing. I guess my other question is in regards to their approach with segments and the high friction surface treatment. You know, I keep going back to the reason why that they proposed this was they thought it would be somewhat effective. But they also made a case that it was cheaper than guardrail. And at the time and I do realize there was a hillside and grading, but that is essentially where guardrail is most frequently installed. And they sort of made it sound like it was a new technology from outer space that they just couldn't utilize at the time. And so as I'm looking at the costs of all the segments, you know, together, I'm not sure how this ended up being cheaper than guardrail that they didn't want to initially install. And I mean, this is not my ward, but if I remember right, that was kind of the number one ask in some of those areas before the treatment was suggested. So I guess I feel like they chased a frisbee like a dog and got a little off duty and we could have had another solution on here with the cost estimate for guardrails that would be cheaper and probably more effective than segment 2 and 3. So I would like more information on that. I mean, I don't want to spend 100% of city funds on something that actually wasn't what the residents initially asked for and may not be as effective. So I'm certain if segment 1 is going to be very effective, it's a great deal for us. I like that it's with their change order and that's the way it should be because that's not our road to maintain or to get contracts for or anything else. But I'm just questioning if this is the right solution for this problem that they gave us these estimates for. I mean, why would I spend $496,000 on a segment when I could pay 100% of guardrail that may make everyone feel safer, that may be safer and would ironically be cheaper than that segment, right? And am I missing something?
We have to go back and do some checking on that cost. I don't remember the numbers we had. I don't know how accurate they frankly were, but
Okay,
I would say a couple things. One, I think from the county's perspective, they are trying to promote a solution that could be implemented quickly. So if we want the guardrail route, I know the county and they're very conservative. And their biggest statement, what they say when you bring up the guardrail is, well, we might need easements. And they're right, they might. You just don't know without doing some engineering to determine if you could put the guardrail in without doing some grading and then encroaching onto private property and needing easements. So if there are easements required, you're not going to get it done with the project that's already got the approval. It's just going to delay it. And I don't think there's much chance that they're going to jeopardize their schedule. And so the skin resistant overlay addresses the primary concern, which is crash history that we're seeing is folks they're sliding off the road. So you're addressing the root cause, I think, that they're seeing. Now, Thomas, we haven't had a chance to even talk about this frankly, but I think the intent was to ask, and I think the county was willing to come talk directly to us about this. So that might be, an ask for the next meeting is to have them come in and provide a little more insight on this. I haven't had much opportunity to do that at all. So the question of guardrail, we can certainly research further and get a little more information and bring it back, certainly.
I can't, oh,
I was just gonna say, I mean, this is not the first week or month or even year the county has heard about this. So the fact that they haven't done any research to determine what the cost would be for the guardrail is a little bit astounding because they're not providing the information for them to make a decision or for us to make a decision before shutting it down. And they may be thinking it's busy work, but and I don't know what the county's policy is on, easement acquisitions. If someone says no, do they use eminent domain? I mean, we had a lot of residents, including property owners, that said, hey, there's been a car in my yard before that's gone off the road. So I'm not sure that they're gonna have a lot of pushback from private citizens that don't want to either donate an easement or be reasonably compensated for an easement. So and this is not a criticism of you, Director Brown, but I think it's utter horse patooties that the county doesn't know what the cost of the easements would be or if they need them. Because that would delay a project. I mean.
If I could make one statement, if that's all right. So
Well,
the
yes.
the determination of whether easements are necessary is not a simple thing to do. It requires an engineering analysis and it requires surveys.
Okay,
to
but
be
why would they
completed,
not
so-
have started on it?
That's It takes time and cost. It does cost money to do that. So they literally have to hire an engineer to get a surveyor out and get information on the topography, the slopes behind the pavement. And they cut cross sections and they determine whether they have the appropriate slopes or not. So it takes time and it does take some cost to do it. It's not something they can just do in a matter of an afternoon.
Do you think, and this is just, if you don't mind, Vice Chair.
Sure.
Do you think this in any way, like with the, say that they did want to go, yes, the cost I think would be very significant to do this entire area, to see how much easements are needed. But would this hurt their timeline for the design build project in general too? That contractor, I think, had to, I forget exactly when they have a timetable that they had to be on.
Right, I'm sure they have a schedule and a completion date as part of that contract, so if you enter in the need to acquire easements, it's just not gonna work. I'm not saying it's impossible or couldn't be done, but it's not something that the county is likely or MoDOT's likely to entertain. If the skid resistant overlay that the high friction surface treatment addresses the root cause of the problem, I think that's the easiest, cheapest solution. Than guardrail.
Tracy.
Yeah, I just want a little clarification on the high friction surface treatment I don't know where other places that it's been used, but is it just to keep cars from sliding? Or is it so much friction that it slows cars down because it's almost kind of bumpy?
No, it's not intended to be like a rumble strip or something like
Okay,
that.
I didn't know if the
It-
friction was coming up.
Yeah, no, it's
I'm not sure if
it's just intended to increase the surface friction enough to keep you from sliding off the road if you're traveling too fast. Improve the friction of the pavement.
Doesn't
So
have,
they feel confident that that would help, obviously. I mean, have you seen it used other places? Do you think it's worked? I mean, I guess I'm trying to think.
Yeah, it's
Is it
absolutely a
worth-
proven countermeasure for this situation. It's an accepted solution locally, nationally.
Thank you.
Yes. Mr. Bowden.
So my question is, going back to just this, this project as a whole and looking at the city in our, safety issues with roads around the city and using city money for this project, is this one of our top, like, three, road safety issues? Do we have other road safety issues that should come before this on our priority list?
in this case, I would say it depends on what criteria you're using. I think there is an argument, especially with community input. Old State, it doesn't have the crash data. That's the, it does have crash data, but it's pretty typical comparatively. I would say that's probably the most damning factor of it, of the data going against them, but I will say that there's some more anecdotal evidence, but did you have any specific on that?
No, I'm just thinking, all of the different roads that have problems with narrow roads and huge drop-offs. And I just don't know, I haven't looked at that specifically to see, compare the data that we have to see if there's something that needs it more. I'm just asking, I'm not saying that I think we should go with something else. I just was wondering.
I don't know that I have a higher location, frankly, that I'm aware of or that people have raised. We've tried to address these as they come up on our system. It's a little difficult when you start looking at the county system or MoDOT system. It's definitely a different animal, higher vehicles for sure than what we typically experience. And clearly there's been a desire to see something done on Old State before. We've put in applications for federal funding to improve Old State previously. Unsuccessfully, at Ridge Road to get a roundabout in that location. So we haven't been opposed to spending money on the county system. This is the first time we've had a situation where they've been willing to offer cost share. So that is a positive, certainly gives us something more to consider.
All right, anybody else have anything on Old State?
I'd like to see it brought back For action.
Yeah, so I was gonna ask, I was just gonna ask this, Rick, and I know that this is probably a difficult question to answer, and I know it's probably not something that you want to vocalize publicly, but I appreciate that the county has come around and is offering to, the way that I'm reading this, assist us in solving this problem, I guess. This looks like a pretty substantial outlay of money for a city onto a county road. So I don't know a whole lot about enhanced friction systems. My concern is, this looks to me like putting a Band-Aid on a problem. And my concern is, once that Band-Aid gets a little old, we're gonna have the same problem again. As an engineer type person, I get that this is a less expensive and fast solution, but you know, good, fast, and cheap is not always a great mix of things. So is this the right solution? Or are we looking at taking an opportunity because we're saving $200,000?
Well, I think your point is taken that it is a short-term solution. I mean, any payment that you apply has limited lifespan. This is no different. I don't know that I can tell you what the expectation is exactly, and we might want to do more research on that. But it has a limited lifespan, so, you know, 5 years from now, 7 years from now, hopefully the county is planning to, you know, resurface the road at that point, and they'll correct the situation at that time, or perhaps at that point, they have a better, more long-term solution in mind that includes guardrail with that possibly. And that would be my thought, is that this would be a bridge towards getting that done maybe in the future.
So is this the kind of thing where, you know, whatever the lifespan is, 5, 7 years, if that runs out and then they come to repave it, and normally, or replace it, or whatever it is, are they replacing it with this stuff? Generally speaking, would they replace it with this stuff again, or would they just put regular asphalt down?
Well, that's a good question, and I'd kind of like to ask that of them myself, because the one question that really hasn't been answered is, why are we having this problem?
Right.
The road was more recently resurfaced, and it's not typical that you expect to see this occur, frankly. And when it does, usually you want to know, is there a problem with the mix when they placed it? And sometimes it's been known to happen, so they may have used aggregates that polish, that become smoother than they should have for whatever reason. It does happen, and you see that on occasion. So I don't know if that's what happened here. I don't know if they've looked into it or done any kind of testing to find out, and that's something that I think is feasible. We can ask those questions, but you shouldn't have this occur really. If the asphalt is working as intended, you shouldn't be coming back after 5, 7 years of the original overlay and seeing higher rates of crashes like this, in my opinion.
Because I mean, from what I've seen, the crashes are primarily people like literally falling off the road. Right?
Well, they're
And crossed over.
Yeah, but I mean, like
they're
they're
clearly
losing control of their car.
they're clearly losing control and they're going off the road, right?
So it's not like, you know, they're accidentally clipping somebody's mirror. I mean, these cars are kind of careening out of control and landing in people's front yards. All right. What do you got, Tom?
Oh, I was just gonna say that, just, I think like from my understanding that of the surface treatment, it's like how I kind of think of it is, it's like a resin that they put on top of the street. So it's almost like if, and I don't know for sure, but if the county's coming to us and saying that this is a good solution, then it's maybe there is some information on that mix that this would mitigate it. It would put it back to where it actually should have been as a road. Because what it does is it slows down the deterioration of the road over time, because over time you're going to have that road smooth out.
Right.
This is supposed to pretty much put a bridge gap in between that, so it should have a benefit. But the question should be raised at that point: why are we having this issue so early in its lifespan? That being said, I do think that this, based on what I've read, these do seem to work. it seems to at least put the road back into a condition and cars, literally, they've tested. You know, when you slam on the brakes, how far the car goes after a certain line. When you have this treatment applied to the same condition road, you're stopping a good, I think it was like 4 or 5 feet before. So it does, you know, there is a benefit there, but I think quantifying it would probably be a good next step.
So one last question. Can we invite the county to come back in next month and so that we can ask them some of these questions and to ask them to bring with them a cost benefit calculation?
And that includes the guardrail.
And the guardrail?
Because I guess, does it matter if you stop? And it depends on where the vehicle is, where you're losing control. There's a lot of factors, slope. But it may not matter if you stop 4 feet quicker if you're already off the road because there was no guardrail to catch you. That's my concern.
Yeah, I might just add, and I don't know, I mean, I don't think the county's gonna be able to answer this. This might be just a thing for you Rick, to think about, but I mean, basically, the county is saying, I guess we would save some money based on engineering or this plan going through. If we were to do all these segments, you know, for a pretty substantial amount of city money, my question would be, if the city is going to be paying for the fix, whatever that fix might be, I would like for it to be a fix that we've determined is the right fix, not the thing that is convenient for the county to slide in, you know what I'm saying? I mean, if we're gonna make the decision to fix a county road, which I don't know how much I love that decision, but I also don't love the situation that's going on down there. I would prefer to do what we think is the right thing and roll the dice on what our thoughts are than, you know, hope that they've done their study. Because at this point, while I'm very appreciative of this opportunity to share on the cost on some of these things, this has fallen on pretty deaf ears for a long time. So the fact that this is all of a sudden just coming up seems interesting, to say the least. So I'm happy that they're wanting to do something, but I want to make sure that if we're gonna invest, you know, my guess would be $1 million by the time this is done, wouldn't you say, Rick? I mean, 796,000 is gonna turn into $1 million pretty quick.
Well, yeah, basically, they were saying about 800 grand to do the whole stretch would be
Right.
the city's cost. If it inflates, yeah, you could be closer to $1 million, but hopefully.
So I just think, if we're spending, I'm all for getting the road fixed because it is super dangerous and, we hear a lot about it, but I do want to make sure that we're fixing it the right way and not just hopping on a plan that seems convenient and fast. So I don't know, is that enough clarification for you guys to what we'd like to try to get to come back from the powers that be, I suppose?
Yeah, I think we extend the invitation, see if we get them back to the next meeting. I don't think it's been maybe a year, weren't they here about a year ago? We could certainly extend the invitation, and I had mentioned that to Joe previously that we wanted to do that. He seemed to be agreeable, so.
And then you might have mentioned it already, let's say we were to just hop on the segment 1 situation, when are they wanting to do that?
Well, I don't know if I can give you a firm answer other than it would be implemented as part of the design build project, so that.
But it's not like this year, right? That's down the road.
Well, I guess it really depends on their schedule and when they plan to do work. So I don't know for a fact that for all I know, it could be this year. If they're planning on doing that kind of work this year and they're in the area, for all I know, they could say, all right, we'll bump it up and get it done. But that's something we want to look into further.
Yeah, so maybe if we just ask that, so they're prepared when they come and, they can say, hey, we think it might be, the beginning of next year, the tail end, whatever it is, whenever it is, it might just help us make better decisions. That's what we gotta do.
Yeah.
Okay, anything, Rob, I see you got your hand up.
Yeah, just real quick, and this probably goes without saying, but I want to make sure that whatever comes back, that we actually get a recommendation as well from Director Brown. I mean, what does he recommend? What do you think we should do as we go forward? Especially in your, with your expertise, I would definitely encourage you to give us your recommendation.
I can do that.
Great.
I would like to get a little more information as well.
All right, anybody else on Old State? Okay, Director of Road Sidewalk. This one's Katie next.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So I don't have a lot to report here, council members, but I do wanted to pass along that I actually did get a set of drawings just this afternoon, from the consultant on the project. So it is moving forward. I haven't had a chance to review them yet, so we'll take a look at them. And provide any comments back to our engineer, and they indicated there was some additional survey work that needed to be done as well. But that's good, they're on schedule, and I would expect them to have everything pretty much done by the end of the month, I would hope. And as long as there's no concerns, we should be able to move and potentially get something set up to bid in April.
And we're still working on needing more easements or anything on this.
I don't believe there's any easements that are necessary, but that's one thing I need to confirm by checking the plans.
Right, that's exciting. Sidewalks are good. Okay, for action, we got some sewer lateral program discussion.
Start with this one if that's all right.
Sure.
You want to take it? That's fine too.
I can give, I'll have it split. I'll do the background on it. You can give the update. So this was an item that was discussed in 2023, a little bit earlier on, about potentially getting a sewer lateral program implemented in the city of Wildwood. That being said, this would be an initiative that would have to be passed by the voters, so it would have to go on the ballot. One of the major obstacles that we ran into and still haven't, it's still an obstacle that we'd have to overcome, is that during the planning process, obviously the county, the people that run this program were excited to potentially add another partner here. But Wildwood is a little bit different than most communities in the sense that, you know, what this program requires for you to benefit from it is for you to be hooked up to public sewer. We've got a lot of residents in our city that do not fall into that category. So just looking at it from that perspective, it's a program we could still pursue. That being said, there will be the asterisks, if you will, that the individuals that aren't hooked up to public sanitary would not benefit from the program. But I guess I'll pass it over to our Director of Public Works if there's additional comment.
I don't know that I have anything else to add on this. We talked before, we were gonna have the county implement the program with us. They were agreeable to doing that. I assume that would still be the case. If we wanted to try to go forward. But we could re-engage with the county and confirm that. But I think I need some direction in terms of if that's the entire committee to proceed ahead, and then towards, you know, it would have to be approved by a vote, what election that would be placed to the public to vote on.
So even if you have a septic, you still have to have a sewer lateral. I mean, there's still something leaving your house connecting to your septic, all the sewer lateral. So, but you're saying their program, because it doesn't connect to the public sewer. I mean, people still need to replace those, even if they have septic. So if they're paying into it. I guess what I'm saying is there any way to tweak the program that they run to include those people that if they have an issue with their sewer lateral line that goes to their septic, that because they're paying, if they were paying into it, if everybody had to pay, why couldn't they be included as well?
Well, at least on my part, that was brought up, and they, from the program's perspective that they're running in the county, it doesn't seem like they would be making that change. That being said, they are still open. I mean, yes, the county would have to make that change. It's something that we couldn't do, and it from my impression, it didn't seem like it was something that would be able to be accomplished easily.
Help me understand why they're saying it has to include everyone. Is that because it's the only way for it to be solvent because they need that minimum amount of funds and they know that that 25% they're not gonna have to pay out to? Or is it because they don't wanna get a list of who signed up for service from MSD or American Water and because there are ways for them to get an accurate way to bill those that would require the service, and it would be to talk to those two companies, because part of the city does have American for wastewater, although most of us have MSD, but are they just saying that they don't have the technology to separate, or is it about the pool of money is only big enough? I don't understand the logic.
We can definitely follow up with them, Rick. Do you have?
Well, I guess I understood it from John Young's perspective, that it was more of a legal issue, not so much
Yeah.
a practical issue. It was just that from a legal standpoint, they had to connect to a public sewer to allow us to implement the program. That's the way I took it. Maybe I'm incorrect in that, but
And I get maybe why they'd be eligible for payback for the program legally if they're connected to the public, but I don't understand why there's not a way to not charge them and they would just not be enrolled in the program. That's what I don't understand. Like either legally or if the logic is related to the pool of money that would need to be collected.
Because everyone has to vote on it, maybe that's.
I mean, there's a difference between everybody not voting or I guess it's easier to tell people that have the right to vote on it. This will not cost you money because you're not enrolled. And we would have to make sure that they know that, but that to me is a different issue than.
Then they would be voting for other people to have to be. Right?
Right, but I mean, we would just have to try, and it's failed before because my understanding was that they were not going to be charged, but.
you wouldn't be charged.
Yeah, I think the bigger question,
way
I think,
this
was
reads
who's
is
voting,
they-
not who's charged.
Yeah, everyone has to vote.
Has to vote.
So you can't, that's very difficult, but I, with the program, they separate it out by the city, so it would just be, like, there would be the Wildwood pool they would have. So the individual, and I'm sorry if that didn't read there.
Yeah,
My
it reads
understanding-
like everybody in the city is paying.
My understanding is, and this is my understanding, but I believe Director of Public Works agrees here, is that only the individuals that are connected to public sanitary would be the ones paying in,
Okay.
but the decision would be up to the entire city. So you would
So I'm
have,
telling you, you gotta pay more.
Yeah.
That's probably where.
Well, so my question would be though, because we had a little bit of this conversation at the watershed task force meeting the last time. You know, MSD is gonna come out with this stormwater thing that they wanna put on. But only people that are served by MSD are voting on that. So maybe this is probably a question for John, maybe it's not possible for us to do it this way. But you know, we are all in separate wards within the city, so people that are in my ward can't vote for Tracy and vice versa, so they're separated by what their service areas, so to speak. I don't know why we couldn't do the same thing for people that were within the MSD service area or American Water, whatever, the sewer department service area are the people that vote on it. My assumption is, you know, there will be people that have septic that would really like to have this and are frustrated they can't. There's most of them that probably don't care one way or the other, but would be afraid to say, I'm gonna force somebody else that I don't have anything to do with to pay this amount of money. So I don't know that we can have a separate delineation for that. I also don't know why we couldn't, because we have it for all kinds of other stuff.
Can I
So-
give a little bit of history?
Sure.
When we put it up for a vote the last time, we really didn't have enough time to get the information out so that everybody could correctly understand it. It was then at that point only going to be for those that were hooked up to sewer lateral. Those on septic tanks were not gonna collect money from, or they weren't gonna receive the services at that point in time. But, residents really didn't understand that. We really didn't have enough time to explain the difference or promote the idea. I just, any way we can figure it out so that we can get a sewer a lateral policy, I think would be very beneficial for our residents. A lot of our residents are living in homes that are now 40 plus years old. And they see that in other cities that are providing that service. And I frequently get asked, why can't Wildwood do that? So I guess you know, if there's a need to talk to John, then that's what we need to do. But I think whatever concerted effort we can put forth would be greatly appreciated by our residents. And I must have been reading that wrong, the notes from the agenda, because it looked to me like they could offer service to individuals with septic tanks. It took a little bit of a different framework, but maybe I misread it. I don't know.
In this case, and we are more than happy to continue the conversation with the city attorney to figure out how this can be done, but it is pretty adamant. Confirmation was given from the county, people that oversee the county program, that if you're not hooked up to the public side of it, you can't benefit from it. That being said, you're not getting charged for it either, which is good. But it does create the messaging issue, and it does cost a significant portion of taxpayer dollars to get things on the ballot too. So just those kind of items can all be presented back to you all for consideration as well. If we wanted to kind of bring it back after seeing, after we kind of got some answers that, hey, this is definitive, you have to do it this way. It seems like these are, at least with how we'd have to present it, how we'd actually have to carry out the program, that is stagnant. But we could talk with the city attorney if there's a way to break out the ballots. Maybe based off MSD district, but I don't know for sure if that could be done either.
The other thing would be, if we were to put this on the ballot, when would we want to do that? I mean, I assume into November. And so, I mean, I'm assuming we would be now next November, because this November it'd be hard to get much thought put into anything.
We do it.
You could do that too. I thought we normally try to do stuff. Whenever it is, but it may be, if we can't break out a separate little district for people that would be using it, I know there's a lot of restrictions on the kind of ballot language that you can use, but we might want to take a couple cracks at like what that actually looks like and what we can say for, those people that wouldn't be affected in any way by this. But I also think it's a super important thing. I mean, it's not a fun fix to have, that's for sure. Yes, ma'am.
So do we have any examples of this happening somewhere else and some maybe ways that they solved this problem? Because we are unique, but that we have some with septic and some with sewer, but I'm sure there's other places in the state that have the same.
There's and I don't have them on the top of my head. There are other places that have figured this out, but it really comes down to the vote. We tried this before, and it is a very difficult, with the language you're able to produce for the ballot. It's a difficult two-sided story, if you will, saying that, hey, we want you to approve this program to benefit your neighbors, but don't worry if you don't have access to, if you don't have public sewer, access to public sewer, you're not included. But then there's I think a lot of misconception that's generated from that, and it's our residents that voted against it the first time, is that they thought they might have to pay into something that they're not going to benefit from, which is a realistic understanding. You can realistically understand that viewpoint, but I think it's limited with what you can put on. That's the issue.
And I understand that, but I'm thinking about what Councilmember Edens just said, that is there a way to has it been done before so that everyone benefits and everyone pays in? And I know that it may be hard for us to get to that point, but that would be like the best of all worlds, because like where I'm at, we all have septic. So yeah, to have that benefit in the city would be very helpful. So if there is a way to push forward and do that, even if it's difficult, might be worth it in the end to get everyone to vote and see it as it's gonna help me.
In this case, I mean, the city I don't think the county would.
Yeah, we would just, it would be a city.
It would-
The city would just make it.
Yeah, and if that's something we would want to go down, that is something we could explore. I would say we'd either need to, with the amount of time and effort that would go into overseeing a program like that, we are talking, either a contract out to some firm that I would have to do further research on that, or we'd be talking additional employees to run that program. But it's something that we could do.
Well, and you also have, which is the same thing as the county, but the county's got enough people in it where it kind of I guess, gets cleaned up a little bit, you don't, it's like when we take on roads, we don't really know, you don't know what you're taking on. So, people that are connected to public sewer systems, a large portion of that system is maintained not by the people that own, the home. That's just a little section. Whereas septic fields and everything else, that's pretty much incumbent on them doing the right thing a lot, all the time. So there's some risk to that, but I mean, yeah, I would think it would just mean we do it. I mean, I know when I used to live in St. Anne, they had one. I'm pretty sure it was just the city that ran that, not the county, but something to look at for sure. Cause it's something I think everybody would need. I mean, it's, like I said, I've had one replaced. It's really not fun. All right, anything else? Oh, yeah, Ms. McCutcheon.
No, I thought I put my hand down. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, anything else on sewer lateral? Okay, Rick, you need something special for us?
Well, I mean, I think the question, I'm hearing there's interest in doing this. We should keep working forward.
Yeah.
And put it back on the agenda for next month.
Yep, I think so. And I think if we can get even just like a very rough estimates as to whether there is companies that we can contract, or if it would mean that we need to get, an employee. I mean, there certainly is. From what I recall, there was a city inspector that came out to look, or no, there wasn't. We had a contractor come to our house, they run a pipe, like a camera through the pipe, then they turn it into the city and the city says yes or no. That was how it worked a long time ago in St. Anne. So I imagine it's probably very similar. And then, you pay for it, city reimburses you. I would imagine we would have to have some kind of delay because that's gonna take some funds to raise it. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and if I may, I would say that the understanding would be that this will be on next April's ballot, and part of my thought process on that is, that's a municipal ballot where we are able to add to it without additional charge. We would be costing the taxpayers money to add it to the November ballot.
Sure, that is correct. So then we would also, I would suggest then, figure out a communication plan if we were to do that, and when that needs to start effectively rolling out, because that would be relatively soon. Okay, proposed modifications to the intersection of Turnberry Place and Strecker Road. Who's taking that one?
Well, we've pushed this one a couple times now. Councilmember Eads is with her presence tonight, so I don't know if I really need to go through this necessarily. I don't know if Councilmember you'd like to speak to it or not. Is there any feedback you'd like to provide?
Well, I just, this was brought up originally in 2009. Some of the original HOA representatives that I talked to were actually around back then. And at the time, it was something that the fire station recommended, but the Board of Public Safety said no, because the thought was this would be a public road with retained access, and the subdivision at the time had the crash data to support it with the curvature of the hill. So when you come into that subdivision, take a right, you're coming down from Clayton, or you're coming down from Strecker towards Clayton. If there is a car parked at all around those first two driveways on the right, you're likely to kind of hit them. So there was some speed and sloping issues. So the city did agree that the road should stay closed. And everything that I've heard from various trustees over the years is that, one, they agree that it should stay closed except for emergency access, and two, a resounding, the solution that we have doesn't work and it looks terrible. And so with the traffic study, what we did find is that yes, there are cars that are not stopped by the delineators. It's largely some of their own residents, although it could be other cut through traffic, like for deliveries. Maybe Uber Eats or something found the quickest way to a house. So the solution that we have doesn't work. It continually costs the HOA money to replace them, and it doesn't look good. And this is highly visible from two wards, and instead of between subdivisions, it looks like it's much more visible because it is from Strecker Road. So when we met with Joe McCarthy, his original concern about any sort of gate was that they had to leave it open during a snowstorm. And what we found when we talked to, or what I found when I talked to city staff was that they were not aware that that was a required code and that other subdivisions are not actually doing that. So what was communicated back was that that would not be asked of Turnberry unless something else has been discovered. So that was kind of their chief objection, like, you know, what are our requirements from us in terms of maintenance? If any, during storms, and if there isn't anything, then this is kind of fine with us. Since then, my chief contact moved, and the contact that I have, which is the Turnberry email, I don't know if anybody is ever checking it, since I have emailed that for their comment, but I would hate to have this die on the vine, because I do think this, unless somebody has another solution, this is certainly a better solution. I mean, it would be nice if the white picket fence was, you know, spray painted black and would match or something, but it's, you know, not a hill I'm gonna die on. So I would like to, you know, go ahead and have this move forward, because I do get complaints and I haven't made progress on it for years. I wouldn't say for the next, you know, meeting, but maybe the following city council meeting. And that way, if I hear any objections in between, you know, now and then, but it's less than we've spent in other areas. And I really don't have another idea because it is so wide. If you put in any other type of delineator that had to be removed that was more permanent, you're looking at least 6, which slows down the time to remove them and get out of the vehicle because it's wider than what we've done in other areas. So I don't think we can do the same, you know, solution. We don't have 3 permanent tags. We'd have a whole bunch to restrict that. So I'd like to go ahead. Been left behind. Other areas have been improved. It's highly visible. Solution isn't working.
All right. Would like to move ahead with the plan.
The motion.
Is it budgeted?
And if it's not, could I just motion that it's on next year's budget? And that it's, yeah. I mean, it's not a #1 safety concern, but it is something that we owe to the residents to do. They've complained about it for years, so I'm not saying unless you have the money at mid-year. You know, I would say mid-year or next year. I'm not asking any deficit spending on a gate.
So great. Ms. McCutcheon.
Yeah, I believe when they first put up the delineators was because there was a lot of building going on in Wildwood at that point in time. And people were, of course, you know, out house hunting, and they got a lot of traffic from that as well. As far as a slope and having to turn in, we have that in many areas of Wildwood. So I don't know why the delineators aren't just taken out if everybody thinks they're unappealing to look at. I really don't see a need for them. And it isn't budgeted, and according to our ordinances, we are not supposed to block a public street. And I know when the whole thing of Birch Forest came up, the fire district wanted a gate there, and it was voted down for the cost, which would be the same cost as putting a gate in this area as well. But if it's so unappealing, I don't know why HOA just doesn't take them out and just go ahead and use it. I mean, they started originally when Wildwood was starting to boom, and that was the reason they were put up at that time. It is a through street, but when people moved there, they knew that it was going to be a through street. So, you know, I'm totally against moving forward with this. It's not in the budget. It's not something that's absolutely necessary. You know, I think things could be spent, that amount of money could be spent for something else that would be more beneficial to the whole community, like watershed erosion or, you know, some other project that would benefit everyone and not just a subdivision. And I do also know that one time a gate was allowed to be put in, which is farther out where there aren't a whole lot of houses. and it was kind of set back in the subdivision. And they had to have a survey with 100% of the residents approving that the gate be put in. That's my comments.
Right.
I can prove it. Yeah, I can just say that, the residents do not want this street open because they have had safety issues in the past, so it was open. There was a speeding and, I think my understanding is the parked cars were hit and there were some near misses. So, what they have very much communicated to me is we would rather have it look terrible than have it opened up again. And so, you know, I know you very much care about public safety and what the residents want, and that's where they're at. They don't want it open at all. They'd rather have no gate than open. And I will say, again, not asking for deficit spending doesn't have to be done right this second. We can budget for it. If we have the money at mid-year, that's great. But the solution that we have isn't working. And I would say, like, in the grand scheme of things, yes, you know, we discussed a gate in your ward, but we also spent, I think it was a total of $100,000 at that location by the time you included the landscaping, the change orders, and the pillars. So comparing that to my residents didn't get it. So you can't either, when $20,000 is way less than what we spent there for a much more highly visible area. So it's not that I'm trying to have two different standards. What I'm just saying is, like, there's different solutions appropriate for different widths. And the solution that we did in your area, I think looks really great. I just don't think it works on that particular street, so I have to kind of do something else, but it's still less than what we spent there. So
Some of what we spent there was the builder contributed to that. It wasn't all city money.
I'm talking about just the city total is still less than what we spent there. So I did end up supporting that. And so I think it would be fair if you help, I mean, you know, do what you want, but it's still less than what we spent in that area total. So I think that's just important to keep in mind.
Well, just FYI, it wasn't supported. It was voted down.
The gate, but the other improvements that added more, cost more than this, were supported.
Okay, anybody else have anything? Ms. Vedvik has something?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry I was a little late to get my card in.
Sure.
I'm not for or against the gate. I just had a couple of questions. And one of the questions, Council Member Eden's already answered. But I had a couple others that, has there been any kind of a traffic study done? On that, the city would then own the gate? Is that the way it would work?
I understand.
And they would be doing the maintenance also?
That is my understanding, unless one of the things that we talked about in the HOA meeting was if there would be a cooperative agreement, like if the HOA was responsible for that. It sounded like they would be amenable to that. I don't know if that means shoveling snow or if that means just making sure that the sensor is brushed off in the snow. So I'm not sure what the maintenance agreement would look like, but they didn't.
And then the other thing is, could you say again that it has to be open for snow removal?
No, that was the concern that the HOA had, that the city staff said it does not.
Okay, and
They just asked for
The EMS just
clarification.
has to be able to.
Yeah, to be able to open it.
Yes, it has to be operational at all times. If it goes down, you better have someone emergency, city would have to have someone emergency go out there and fix it. And then also, it would just have to be accessible and they'd have to go.
and then because it's a city-owned gate on a city street, what if there are others who want that? Do they come here and ask for that, or
What do you mean others?
other subdivisions?
Typically they have, so there are other gates already in existence. I think there's one at the end of, is it Church Road and the Highlands, there's a gate, right?
We certainly have gates over emergency access entrances into subdivisions. We have a handful of them around currently.
But are those city provided gates? Cause I know years ago, like we had them put in like when they wanted to build like access up on Joe's Way and some other places, but those are
private, Joe's Way is a private street though.
thank you, I do know that. Yeah, so,
They were probably installed with the subdivisions. When the subdivisions were built, those were probably part of the improvement plans and were constructed at that point. So,
right, are there other city-owned gates is what I was trying, I should have phrased it that way.
I'm certainly, we don't have any automated gates that would be comparable to this. This would be a first for us. And
Again, I'm neither for or against, it's just trying to get the correct understanding that this is not something that just everyone can do.
So this is, I would say that this is a probably singularly unique situation in the city in that we have a public road that for whatever reason was deemed to be closed by an HOA who had, I mean, right now, they're the ones that put these delineators up, right?
No, they worked with, so there's other, if you go back to other meetings, there's longer attachments which had the previous study of how this came to be. And then it had all the old traffic studies from like 2007.
Yeah, right, but I mean, like, who pays for that? Who's?
They pay for it, but they did that with the city approval, so it's not like they just put them in. There's
No,
an ordinance to close the
No,
road.
I get that, but I'm saying like, so the delineators that are there right now,
Yes,
they pay for it, the city doesn't pay for
correct. I think the city might have paid to originally install them, and then their job is to replace them when they go down.
whose job, the cities or the
The
HOAs?
HOA.
Okay.
Yeah, the HOA is replacing them, which, you know, to their point, they could say, why are we? And that was a question that came up is why are we paying for these at all in the first place if it's your public road and you deemed it to be closed? So they did bring that up. I mean, I think it's such a nominal fee right now to place a delineator that they're, you know, not gonna die on that hill.
Yeah, so we did have a traffic study, if I remember right, I think there was 4 cars that went through it when they did it, is that right, Rick? And I think 3 of the 4 was the same car, is that right?
something like that, yeah, or we inferred it was probably a resident of the subdivision. Yeah.
So it is a odd situation for sure. Mr. Lee and I happened to drive over there the other day to take a look, and I mean, it is, the delineators are ugly, the fence is ugly, the whole thing is ugly.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit like with the Old State thing, like the solution that we have is ugly, and the one person that's, I personally have a hard time putting a gate in for one car that's doing this, but it is ugly and a solution needs to be found. I don't know that that's the best solution.
I think the obvious solution is to ask somebody not to drive through it. But I would say, homeowners change over.
Sure.
And that's not the same car that was doing it 10 years ago. And it's so there's a history of it continuing to happen. So just because there's one resident doing it now doesn't mean there hasn't been for the last 20 years, other residents. So-
I mean, I think I appreciate I genuinely appreciate your advocacy for this. It is ugly when you drive by it. But I know we've also had a lot of turnover with the HOA there too. So I think, the unfortunate reality with HOAs is a lot of people change and opinions change, and who knows what people want to do, and we don't want to put in a gate, nobody's gonna go shovel the sensor off and then we're stuck, or who knows, whatever it is, so. You would like to move it forward?
Yeah, and I was just thinking too, I mean, I don't think anybody right now shovels between the pylons. I mean, maybe, but so the same problem exists.
Yeah, but if there's an emergency, they're going through the pylon,
Right.
they're not going through a gate.
But I think the gate retracts as opposed to swings open, so that does help. Cause they can still drive through the snow, so I don't think it has to, at least that's what we asked for. We asked for a retracting gate rather than a swinging gate for that reason. But yeah, I'd still like to move it forward.
All right, so we have a motion to move forward.
Two council meetings from now.
2 council meetings from now. Deb, is your hand up for now, or was that old?
No, I'm opposed.
Okay, so we've got a motion to move it forward.
I need a second
Would
first.
anybody care to second the motion? See, Ms. Clark will second it. All right, so we've got where you know where we're going with this thing? Okay. So the motion is to move it forward to council in May, is
Yes.
that right, or April? Okay, so the motion is to move this forward to a wider conversation, I guess I would say, in May at the council. Everybody clear on that? All right, all those in favor of moving it forward, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Opposed.
Any abstentions? All right, well, we'll have a wider conversation in May. It would be probably not a bad plan as a suggestion if we could get somebody from the HOA
Yep, that would be.
at the May meeting. Okay,
By the way.
Yes, sir.
I do apologize. I had, back with the minutes, the December minutes actually should be approved. I don't know why I was thinking out of 8.
I
Just
thought
with that same vote.
that's okay.
I just had a little light bulb moment, so
That's
that's
fine.
both now approved and I won't be bringing them back.
Okay, Bree, you got that?
I think,
I'll talk with you after the meeting.
okay, I'm just trying to make sure I have everyone who voted it in.
It was, because it was enough people that were here.
Yes, I don't know why. I think we were freshly coming into the meeting. I was thinking we just got a quorum. Okay, so I do apologize.
Okay. Proposed consultant services agreement for construction, engineering and materials inspection services. That's gotta be Rick.
Good job. Okay, Ken's not here. Council members, this is a somewhat routine request that we make. So when we do our capital improvement projects, we do have the need to have a private consulting firm assist us with the testing of materials and also inspection of construction work that's ongoing. This is typically needed for our annual concrete street and sidewalk replacement project that we are hoping to start here shortly this spring. So the current agreement that we have, a 2-year agreement, and it expires essentially as of 2024. So we'd like to move forward with another agreement and get another agreement in place with a firm to provide those services to us for another 2-year period from 2024 and 2025. So this year, we'd like to utilize Cochran Incorporated for materials testing and construction inspection services. Again, this would be primarily utilized on our concrete street replacement project. I would point out that I may be following this with a subsequent request or two for Manchester Taylor Resourcing Project and or the Route 109 VA improvement project. So those are still subsequent needs that would not necessarily be met with this request in front of you tonight. This is mainly for our concrete street replacement project, possibly the asphalt resourcing project as well, but not the lion's share of the other capital improvement projects that we have on our slate for this year. So the recommendation is moving forward with a city consultant agreement with Cochran to provide materials testing and construction inspection for a 2-year period. The cost of that would not exceed $130,000 for the terms of the agreement, or essentially over 2 years. The total cost would not exceed $130,000. So with that, I'm available for any questions at this time.
All right, any questions? Ms. McCutcheon? I think you're muted, Deb. Okay, would anybody care to make a motion to accept the proposal? Ms. Nyan, anybody care to second? Rob's got a second on that? Okay. Any questions or discussions? All right, all in favor of the proposal for Cochran, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? All right, excellent. Next up, proposal for Precision Concrete for sidewalk.
Thank you, council members. This next request is a request to utilize precision concrete cutting. Excuse me. We have engaged Precision Concrete over the last couple years to help us with our sidewalk potential trip hazards in neighborhoods. And last year they worked in Brentmore Place subdivision. The year prior, they actually worked with us in West Hampton Woods. Garden Valley, yeah, over in that neighborhood. And we've been very pleased with their work. They provide a proprietary operation. They have a patented piece of equipment that they utilize that cuts the concrete. And it provides a very smooth finish. That's smoother than the conventional grinding that we've done in the past. And the other thing that they do that's very helpful is they survey your neighborhoods for you. So we don't go out and find these places. They send their person through the neighborhood and they notify or they document all the potential trip hazards that are out there that need to be corrected. And then assuming we agree terms with the contract, they will move forward and complete that work for us. So this year, we'd like to have them move forward and do additional work again. They put a proposal together for us to complete about 823 potential sidewalk trip hazard repairs. Most of that work is in Ward 8 this time on Village Hills Parkway. And a little bit over in the Meadows of Cherry Hills, as well as on a blank, Oak Park Village in Cherry Hills as well. So the request tonight is to move forward with a contract Precision Concrete cutting to do more work on our neighborhood streets for the amount of $50,000 to address 823 trip hazards within those neighborhoods. So if there's any questions, I'd be glad to entertain them at this time. If not, approval of the recommendation.
Alrighty, any questions or would anyone care to make a motion to move forward? It's not.
It says the discount will only apply if accepted prior to February 29th.
So
It's a little leeway there.
yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So this approval would be conditioned on them retaining the price that's in the proposal, which I would expect they will do. If they aren't, I will not move forward.
You wanna make the motion?
Yes, they did a
Alright,
great
we got
job.
motion to move forward. Anybody care to second? Are you seconding, Rob? Rob is seconding. Excellent. All right. All those in favor of moving forward with fixing some trip hazards, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? All right, excellent. Well, let's hope they honor their pricing.
Thank you.
Proposed application for energy block grant.
So the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant is actually a pretty cool program, and we had an entity reach out to us recently stating that, you know, there's been some federal funding that has gone through and there's some opportunities out there, and pretty much there's a good likelihood that if the city were to apply, that we would get some funding for some type of project that would help with energy efficiency. In this case, the Department of Administration, the Director of Planning and Parks, and the Director of Public Works sat down and looked through the qualifying projects that would make sense. And we also looked at the realistic outlook of what we currently have. You know, how could we best use this? And the conclusion that we came to was that we could utilize it for streetlights, replacing the bulbs that we currently have with more energy efficient LEDs that still fall within the code of what is allowed in the city of Wildwood. So in this case, we would be applying for this grant funding in order to pretty much replace the bulbs and the street lights, the lighting that's coming out on Manchester and Taylor. And potentially we would, if there was additional funds left over from that grant, the grant funds, we would maybe go after some of our park locations too, where we have some lighting that is outdated. So in this case, right now, the department and the Department of Public Works are looking for feedback on this approach to this funding. I mean, I think it's a really good thing if we could do this, because we're gonna save money every single month. If we were to get approved and replace them, this would save the city money.
All right. Any questions?
And just to be clear, there is no local match or
Yes.
cost that we have to put towards the program. It's free money, so
Our favorite kind of money.
definitely want to
Yeah.
find a use for it.
You wanna do something with it.
That's kind of good.
We're just, tonight, what we're looking for is kind of is that approach okay? And if not, we'd be more than happy to provide other alternatives. But this seems to be the way to actually, take money that we didn't have to, generate ourselves and then save money going forward.
Anybody care to make a motion to go do that? I think it sounds great. Teresa makes a motion. Anybody care to second? All right, Lauren's gonna second. Okay, all those in favor of moving forward with the energy block grant, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? I might just suggest, Tom, with that, maybe putting like either a map or a list together of where the city streetlights are, cause like I like the idea of doing Taylor, but if there's some pocket of something somewhere that we don't think about, that would be good too. Did we work with Ameren on the code? Cause they put new streetlights in my neighborhood. They're like looking at the surface of the sun. They're so bright.
Those, well, they should be following our code, but those aesthetic lighting standards are not fine. And those are a little different. Rick, you speak to that. I don't exactly know.
Well,
Lumens.
so, I suppose we could check into that. Ameren has been on a program to replace all their lights with LEDs, and that's been their goal for a while now. So I don't know that we've really looked into the specifics of the fixtures that they're putting out there and how, I know they generally are probably a little brighter than what was out there. I've personally not gotten complaints about it, but,
Yeah, I mean, it's nice because you can actually see things, but I mean, it is bright, real bright, where it was. Yes, ma'am.
That's a good point. I would like to make sure that, they do meet our code and our color temperature of the lights, because, we're really working toward the night sky. And no matter where they're at, we should.
Yeah, I mean, the new ones I know the ones they put in my neighborhood are they're daylight bulbs, so they're not the kind of like orangey tungsten happy feeling. It's like, what have you done wrong lately? Kind of a light when you get underneath it. But all right, we guys can do that. Cool. All right, so last but not least, notification for construction projects.
Okay, I can speak to this, and so this is more of a discussion to get direction from the committee tonight, just with all the work that Spectrum's done, and then recently the work that AT&T has done. They plan on doing a lot of work. We currently have a special use permit in the queue, if you will, for another neighborhood. It's gonna be around 300 homes with another around 1,200 homes total in 2023 that will see fiber installed to their properties. These are more dense neighborhoods. That being said, this last project that happened in West Glen Farms, there were some concerns from residents. The door hangers were not put up appropriately. In this case, the city has, with a condition of the special use permit, at least kind of not something that the code necessarily requires, but as a good faith from AT&T, we are hoping to get, this is part of the when we give them the permit for construction, please do this. And they will be submitting pre-construction pictures and or video of the construction sites, so the people's yards and driveways most important. And then also pictures or video of them placing the door hangers on the actual homes themselves, the doors. The goal is to have that, so then we can affirmatively trust that, yes, they did put door hangers up, or yes, they did take actual video footage. They didn't just take it from, the web or some other source. Those are two things, but another idea that had been brought up was potentially utilizing, traditional signage that you'd put up, the little metal sign that during the construction period, just having them, having the city either put out that construction will begin this date, just giving a heads up at the entrance of a neighborhood, or having that be a requirement for the utility company that's doing the work. Just as a heads up, and this kind of goes down a little bit, but we are going to be reviewing our right-of-way management regulations here soon. The city attorney has done a very extensive review of that process for us, so that'll be coming back. So that kind of just prepping for that work. Is this something, get direction from the committee? Is this something we'd like to pursue? Typically we don't want to promote signage in our right-of-ways, but this is something that would, potentially help the city communicate with its residents when construction's hitting, so they don't have people marking their ground. and then the people are marking their ground and they had no idea that the project's occurring. This is a way for a city to get out ahead of that, to let those, give out the notification, quite honestly. But also, if there's anything from the Director of Public Works, more than happy to hear from it, but the only thing I can think of is maybe some heartburn about the public right of way and signage, but other than that, I think it's probably a good communication tool.
The signage is a bit of a difficult one because we walk a real fine line doing that and allowing it on public right away. Because it's, I don't know that we could allow it by the code. That might be a discussion. We can kind of allow it and look the other way, but whether we can explicitly put it in the code, I don't know that we can do that. It's on public right away. But we can talk with John Young about
With the regulations coming up for review, just looking for feedback on this specific idea and whether or not it's something we should proceed with, look into further, and potentially try to find some kind of language in there to work with it.
So full disclosure, a lot of this idea came from me because I've been living with it for 6 months or so now. So for those of you that haven't had the opportunity to have this exciting event occur yet, what we're finding is that there's, at least to me anyways, seems to be a series of layers of some subcontractors that are supposed to be doing something and don't, I guess is the best way I can describe it. So so for our neighborhood, we had, over the course of probably a month, every couple of days, whoever the guys are that come out and tag everything for every utility. So like the entire neighborhood, driveways, sidewalks, yards, roads, everything was painted. It's painted again as they're now going in and installing things. And then there was little to no notification as to who was doing what. So it was a matter of if you could catch the guy who spoke English, nothing wrong with people that can't, but it's difficult sometimes to understand what's going on. And then you would get a business card and it would go to kind of like a dead number or whatever. So just having gone through this and the amount of phone calls and complaints and meetings and everything else that I've had to do just with this little project, we really need to hold some of this stuff to a much higher standard than we have. Especially because as a city and as residents, we have such little control over what can be done. I mean, the utilities can really just kind of come in, and if it's in the easement, which at least in my neighborhood is literally almost up to people's front doors, they can do whatever they want. So that means removing landscaping, trees, whatever. And while they're, for the most part, trying to put things back together, what we've learned, like legally speaking, they don't have to do anything. So I would suggest we try to get out ahead of this as much as we can. Yes, ma'am.
If we're not, and you've, I'm sure already discussed this with John Young, and staff, but this isn't happening at my word, I just don't know, but
Yeah.
not yet. Although we get left behind, so probably not. Must one for any other AT&T expansion, but since it's the contractors that are also have a separate license to operate, they should have their separate, insurance and bond. Can we not go after them on any sort of permitting? So we're not directly going after a utility that has rights that would be in conflict with ours, but what we are saying is you can do work here, but that contractor can't do the work for you. We are finding them, or because don't they still get permits to work for the city? I thought they did.
So the contractor, the general contractor is getting a permit, yes.
That's just the one general contract.
But they, as Councilmember Farmer stated, they will frequently have subcontractors that come in and do the work as well.
So we don't have any control
And
over this.
that tends to be where a lot of the difficulties fall. So if we can get more control over that, yeah, it probably would be good. I don't know that we can require the subs to have a permit separately, but
Like just as an example, like speaking for myself, I'm not sure that Tom or I could have done a better job of communicating what was happening and expectations with the contractor themselves, what was going on. I've got a matrix built of all the damage and things. And I literally got a text message the other day from a guy that lives up the street who was out of town. Said, somebody just called me and told me they're ripping my driveway out. What is happening? I was like, I have no idea.
Right.
So I drove up there and it was a landscaping company tearing his driveway out to put a new pad in with concrete bags they bought at Home Depot. Like, so we were able to step in and solve that to the best of our ability. Now it's a gravel pad and he's waiting on a settlement check to arrive, but like there appears to be a very low amount of legal or whatever power we have to begin with. And then when we do have it, like it's a real fast and loose as to what is happening.
So let me ask this, is this a solution that gets fixed or worked on for 10 years with the lobbyist in Jeff City? 'Cause
It's
we have
probably
one.
both.
And that's what I'm thinking. So I think we also need to start including, you know, Mr. Silverman in some of these conversations to not only, you know, he does monitor legislation, but let him know that when we're interested in any legislation that affects this. And then I think we're not the only municipality with this issue, so this could be a good thing to loop in with the municipal league and their lobbyists and see if there's some sort of general legislation that would help communities statewide that we could get behind. and
Well, and I
support.
think, I mean, I think you guys have talked to John about what we can do in terms of the photographs
Yes,
and
and
things. Because
we
that,
have-
that was the real problem.
Well, the thing is, a very important, something to distinguish here too, is that when we issue a special use permit, it is only covering the restoration of our public right of way and getting that, like it's literally taking care of that city land. But there's nothing in there, there's nothing in there that covers personal property. So that's something that that one might be an uphill battle. I don't really know. Do you have any input on that? Like what state laws could potentially,
We've pretty much tried to hold them accountable whenever it was required, you know, whether it was work in the right of way or on private property, frankly. And because we felt we could and we should, you know, push comes to shove, whether we can, maybe we can't. But the reality is, they're doing work in Wildwood, our residents are gonna expect it, and they're gonna come back for a permit again. So we have a little bit of we do have some room to push them a bit. And that's what we've been doing, but, you know, taking it so far as incorporating it in the code, that may not be possible.
yeah, cause I was just trying to, when it comes to anything with personal property, I don't think that it would be something that would have to be done at the state
Right.
level. That being said, the one thing that I think we could get hit back on here is that if you make it too difficult to get a special use, then you could make it so it's Wildwood isn't attractive. Yeah, they just, hey, I'll expand here, I'll expand there instead. And they do have those options, so it's that fine dance and
Yeah,
kinda
it
goes-
almost needs to be more of a PR problem for them and not a legal problem for them. And
Yeah.
it's not that, you know, if I was a resident listening, I would, you know, report it to a local news station because that's probably the most effective option.
I think we've found too that the more we can get AT&T involved directly, probably the better we're gonna be.
AT&T as an entity has been a very good partner trying to get this solved. It isn't AT&T, it is the construction company.
Well, but it is because they
Yeah,
hired them
they
and the
hired,
buck
yeah.
stops with them and their job is to manage who they hire.
Yeah,
So
and
that
wanna
kind of
continue.
feels like United being like, when it wasn't our plane that broke, but you own your subsidiary, so it is your plane.
Yeah, I mean, the big issue that we deal with on a daily basis, it seems, is, you know, the three of us went and met with the construction team and they assured us they had a group come out and photograph everything beforehand. And so if there was ever any question as to whether a driveway cracked or a slab popped or whatever it was, it would be very easy. It would be a very easy solution. And what we're learning is they didn't actually do that. They're just using Google Earth and extrapolating whether a crack was there or not, and how big it is, and if it was a problem or if it wasn't a problem. And, you know, I guess I will say to their credit, they have fixed many of the things. The fixes have been weird. They haven't come back yet to restore any of the yards that are screwed up. The sprinkler systems haven't been turned on, so that'll, I'm sure, be a whole new thing. But because they want to do so many homes, and I assume different parts of the city, like,
On that, if you don't mind, Vice Chair.
please.
So an area, Rick had mentioned that they are always usually coming back for permit. They're always gonna be doing work. And that's really the end result for fiber, at least till everyone gets connected. So at this point, they have a ton of work that they want to do in Wildwood this year. In this case, we were able to kind of take advantage of that. We knew it was coming. We met with them and explained to them that, and that's how I think we got to a point now where with these projects that will be moving forward this year, because the city can't, without a doubt, just say no to any of these projects. And we wouldn't really want to do that either, because you want to provide these services to our residents, especially when we don't have to pay for them. That being said, in this case, we're going to be getting, at least when we reached out to AT&T and had a sit down meeting with them, they're now putting the pressure on Star, the contractor, to be taking video and or picture footage of both the door hangers, confirming that's being done, and then also the pre-construction photos, and that will be sent to the city before construction is done. So it's not something that necessarily is listed in our code, but since they do know that, obviously we know if they're gonna come back or not, we know they're gonna come back. This is something that they're willing to kind of budge on, and now they put the pressure on that contractor to ensure it's done. So I mean, I think that is part of it, but also when it comes to right of way regulations, there are other things that we have that will be presented to you that are a little bit more stringent. And I think the key here is we want to make sure it's straight. It's strict enough to keep up with the Wildwood standard. That being said, we'll be sure to point out to her it might be a little too strict.
Ms. Clark.
Well, if we're gonna have this same situation again, if they're gonna come and do it in another area, if we have this list of problems they have, they have to have some project manager at AT&T that's working on this project, right? That person should be in charge of making sure that this is addressed before it starts. And what is their control plan? They should have gone over a list of things that they foresee these things happening, and they should have it. And what is gonna be the process for addressing those, whether it's through the contractor, whether it's, things that we have to get involved with, whatever it is. I just don't see that there was a beginning problem solving and control planning done by their project manager. And that's what I would ask them for, is where is the project manager and how do you manage this with your contractors, instead of going to the contractors and saying, what are you gonna do? It has to all go back to who is managing that project. So I would get with them and talk to them about what is your control plan? Let me see it. And the next time we have another area, we have all of this list of things. How are you gonna address them before permits are given?
We did get an email of the process that they go through, and would be more than happy to distribute that to the committee.
So we met with AT&T and Star, I don't know, about a month ago to talk about those very things and, hopefully start this year on a good footing and be really clear on responsibilities and how we were gonna respond to these things. So we've been trying to learn as best we can. But it has been a bit challenging. I would be the first to admit that.
And it really does seem, it genuinely seems to be, I would say, a subcontractor issue. So I now happen to be an AT&T customer and am very happy with the service that they're providing. So as inconvenient as it was to have my yard trenched 6 times, I'm super glad to have it. But when I switched from the contractor putting the line in originally to AT&T putting it into my house and burying that line, everything they needed to do was taken care of within like a 4-hour period of time versus the 6 months I've been waiting for the other people. So we do need to lean on them for sure, but I do think it's a good conversation to have at a council level or whatever, because these things are happening so quickly, to move quickly to let these guys, just let people know, because as all of you know, there's a million different ways to communicate with our residents, and it still doesn't seem to be enough to communicate with everybody as to what is going on. So sometimes, simple signage and click on this button or whatever it is might be the way do it. So did you guys need anything from us on that, or is that just a?
It would be included, nothing, if there is something specific you would like us to focus on, Vice Chair, that's fine, but we will also have the overall review of the regulations coming up, so we can have that be a portion of
So we got the regulations with fees, right? For the.
it. Yeah, there will be a
stuff.
change in the fees, and that's something that we actually are addressing right now, the updated fee that was approved was not switched out in the updated regulations, so we have requested the city attorney go back and make sure that those numbers reflect the new changes that were approved last year.
So a component of this, just, I don't know that anything needs to be determined today, but just to think about. The thought I had was if you have like a QR code or something that people can click, where they're just able to look and see what's going on, because it's not just a big project like this, it might be a resurfacing project or whatever it is. And it doesn't have to be an individual site for everything, I'm very confident that if our residents can find a QR code, they can quickly hit a button on a website and see where their neighborhood's at, what's going on. But I think a basic level of communication like that from the city that, in some cases, like a bigger project like this, if it's a possibility for us to figure out how to have the utility pay to have the sign made or whatever that is. And the signs, what I was picturing wouldn't be big. They're like the coffee with the mayor signs, like just little things. The more you can get the information out, the better, because next door will light on fire and everything else will get crazy if you don't. Yes, sir.
Is that, so we approached them and for their printer, it was a little late in the game for this first project. We are getting close to releasing that special use permit, sorry. But there are 3 remaining projects that haven't been applied, one I think has been applied for, but not ready yet. So the 3 remaining though, they have also confirmed that they'll mail out a letter to the impacted residents too. So the more we can do of that as well, the more de facto regulation from them returning. Both of those things go hand in hand, and I think that strikes a good balance too.
Is there a mechanism, I know we aren't gonna put it in now. Does a mechanism exist if there is a, nefarious contractor or whatever you wanna call it, that just completely ignores whatever it is we're telling them to do? That we have like a list of people that we just don't approve these people anymore?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think we're well within our right. If we have a contractor that does not perform, we would first shut them down and then discuss what resolution needs to occur to address the concerns. But ultimately, if they come back in town and they want a permit, I think we can tell them no. We probably have to document it and have right reasons, but I think that's all within our rights.
Well, 'cause I know at least for myself, our code enforcement guys are out literally every day talking to these people about any number of things that we're going. So, hopefully that won't happen again, but if it does, I just hate to think that we have to expend such a huge amount of resource, whether it's time or money or both, from the city to just have the very basic stuff done. It seems kind of strange to me from an outside utility like that. So whatever we can do to shore that up would be great. All right. Well, we got a bunch of stuff that is on future agendas. Is there any miscellaneous items anybody would like to discuss? All right. Our next meeting?
I just have a quick question. I had a resident ask before about where the deer meat was going, and I mentioned that the endangered wildlife, the Wolf Center, was probably getting a few carcasses, and then the food bank, but the update just said food bank. So now I'm wondering,
So that should have had, so in this case, the final report has the exact numbers, but the permit authorized up to 82 deer to go to the St. Louis Zoo. The St. Louis Zoo also runs the one.
okay,
Yeah, so the St. Louis Zoo runs that Red Wolf Sanctuary. So out of those 82, and I don't know if they actually did all 82. Say they would go to either or. The Red Wolf specifically, why that is a popular candidate is because that's the kind of meat they typically would eat, and they have to eat carcass. It can't be processed. The other portion, more importantly here, I believe it was, if I remember correctly, it was just preliminary review of the report, but it was really quick. But 30 were sent to Missouri Department of Conservation for testing for
like
the
chronic
DV.
wasting,
Yep.
yeah.
Luckily, I can report happily here that none came back with chronic wasting. That being said, all the remaining, not a single, piece of them, it was either gone through a processor and then go to local food banks through Share the Harvest. Take a look at that program. It's a really cool program that goes across the United States, and the rest were going to the zoo, but the majority went through food processors and to share the harvest.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, she was very excited and I was too, that animals got to use it and it felt like we completed a food chain in a unique way. And then when I didn't see that on there, I thought, gee, I really hope I didn't give inaccurate information.
No,
Because
there's-
something changed, but okay,
Some were donated.
okay, all right, motion to close.
We've got a motion to adjourn. Anybody care to second? Teresa? Oh, Tracy, great. Both your hands are up. We'll go Tracy. All right, non-debatable motion. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right, we'll see you on April 1st, everybody.